If I told you that the most destructive force in history, in war, isn't invasion, isn't even disease, but the collapse of money itself, would you believe me? Empires fall, governments vanish, revolutions explode, but before all of that, there's almost always one warning sign: the currency breaks. Today, we're diving into the 7 most catastrophic currency collapses in history, from ancient Rome to modern Lebanon, and more importantly, the brutal lessons they leave behind. Because if you think this can't happen in your lifetime, history disagrees. Let's start with ancient Rome and the Denarius collapse. Rome was the superpower of the ancient world, disciplined, wealthy, unstoppable. At the center of its economy was the silver denarius, one of the most trusted coins ever minted. But when emperors ran out of money, they didn't cut spending. They simply reduced the silver content again and again. A coin that was once nearly pure silver eventually became less than 1% silver. A shiny lie, prices soared, trade broke down, soldiers began demanding payment in actual silver or gold. Rome didn't fall in a day, it fell in the mint. The lesson here is simple: when governments can print or dilute money, they eventually will, and the value of that money always collapses. Now, fast forward to the Byzantine Empire and the fall of the Solidus. If Rome destroyed its silver currency, Byzantium built its empire on gold. The legendary Solidus was trusted worldwide for 700 years. Until, of course, its rulers made the same mistake Rome made. They began quietly lowering its purity to fund wars and palace luxuries. At first, no one noticed. Then, everyone did. The Solidus, once the world's most stable currency, lost its legitimacy. Trade weakened, trust evaporated. The lesson: even the strongest currencies die the moment trust dies. Stability is an illusion until it isn't. Next, let's look at revolutionary France and the assignat disaster. The French Revolution promised freedom, equality, and a brand new paper currency called the assignat. Backed by confiscated church lands, it sounded like a genius idea. Until the government printed more and more and more. Within just a few years, assignats lost almost all their value. Farmers refused to accept them. Bread prices exploded, and riots returned to the streets of Paris. The revolution didn't just devour kings, it devoured savings. The lesson is that paper money backed by political promises is only as strong as the people's belief. When printing becomes easier than discipline, collapse becomes inevitable. Let's cross the Atlantic to the Confederate States. During the American Civil War, the Confederacy needed money to fund its armies, so it printed greybacks, huge quantities of them, unsupported by gold, silver, or stable taxation. By the end of the war, Confederate currency suffered hyperinflation exceeding several thousand%. A month's pay for a soldier couldn't buy a loaf of bread. Families carried bags of cash that couldn't buy a single meal. When the Confederacy lost the war, its money became worth zero overnight. The lesson is clear: war forces governments to print. But war doesn't guarantee victory, and when a state collapses, its currency dies instantly. Now for the one everyone knows, but few truly understand: Weimar Germany and its hyperinflation from hell. After World War I, Germany printed money to pay war reparations and survive economic chaos. By 1923, inflation became so extreme that a loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. Prices changed multiple times per day. People literally burned banknotes for heat because firewood was more expensive. Weimar's collapse paved the way for extremism, dictatorship, and another world war. The lesson here is that hyperinflation isn't just an economic event, it's a social and political earthquake. When money becomes meaningless, people will turn to anyone who promises order. Let's jump to a more modern example: Argentina and its never-ending currency crisis. Argentina shows what happens when a nation keeps repeating the same mistakes: massive debt, government overspending, and printing money to fill the deficits. This leads to currency devaluation, capital controls, and default again and again. In the last more than 40 years, Argentina has suffered 8 currency collapses. Savings have been destroyed, the middle class hollowed out, and trust is permanently damaged. The lesson from Argentina is that a currency doesn't collapse just once. It collapses every time the government chooses short-term fixes over long-term discipline. Finally, we come to Lebanon, from 2019 to 2021, when the banks locked their doors. This is the collapse no one expected, but everyone should have. Lebanese banks promised high interest rates and guaranteed safety. Then one day, they just froze withdrawals. People couldn't access their own savings. The Lebanese pound lost over 90% of its value. Middle-class families were wiped out. Doctors, engineers, retirees, everyone who trusted the system was trapped. The lesson is stark. Money in the bank is not a treasure chest. It's a loan to an institution, and institutions can refuse to give it back. So, what is the universal lesson here? Across thousands of years, across continents, across empires, every collapse teaches the same truth. Money is trust, and trust can vanish overnight. The people who survived these collapses weren't the loyal, the obedient, or the hopeful. They were the ones who diversified, held real assets, avoided debt, kept liquidity, and questioned the system before the system cracked. Every crisis in history has transferred wealth from those who trusted the system to those who understood its fragility. So the real question isn't, can a currency collapse happen again? The real question is, when it happens, will you be holding paper promises or real value? If this gave you a new perspective, hit that subscribe button, because history has the answers, and I'll show you where to look. Thanks for watching.